Scarlet night side of things normally. Thompson again. His outlet is Grant, and he's got room already into plus territory. Oh my goodness. That was Desmond Igbinason that took the hit on the sideline.
We talked about that conversation in the locker room. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And Grant looks like he's sending a message and showing that Rutgers defense who he wants to be. What a violent football play. Great job by Casey Thompson going through his reads, getting to his outlet, and then Grant with the finish.
Oh, I mean, first place is when you end the season, not now. I mean, it's fake first place. Thank you, guys.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker Fan Sports Show.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, David Gaspers, and I'm with Honky.
2 consecutive conference runs in a row for the first time since 2018. Our first one-score victory since 2020. A second straight second-half shutout by the defense. Maybe this program's starting to turn the corner under Coach Joseph. Go Big Red.
So rare, Honky can't even say win properly. Also with Boomer.
Boomer, than Iowa football. Say it again, Boomer. You were on mute.
Oh, great!
All we got was Iowa football.
Well, just saying, this is the only Husker fan podcast guaranteed to be less offensive than Iowa football.
It was good a second time, buddy.
Yep. It's all professionalism
absolutely.
Here.
At 100%, no doubt about it. Well, guys, another victory. Rutgers goes down 14-13, like there was no doubt. Redcast Rob was there on site, right, Honky?
Yeah, absolutely. He did a great job for us there. He had a blast. We even did the pregame show about 2 hours before, and that was all of 5 minutes planning. And he runs into Aaron Sorensen, runs into the team. Actually, the bus almost drives him over as the team is getting to the field. So that was a lot of fun.
I think they're aiming for him.
I think so. If you haven't seen that, Redcasters, it's actually worth your time. Go back. We didn't even make the podcast out of it. It's a YouTube exclusive, but it was about a 30-minute show we did about 2 hours before the game, and it was a lot of fun.
It's very cool. It's very coal. And Rob got his first victory. Is that right?
That's correct. His first victory in person. He got to see from the sideline working it. I mean, that was cool.
Yeah, well, it wasn't pretty by any means. We got behind early and down 13-0 at half. Offense continues to struggle to put points on the board there, but we found a way in the fourth quarter, and that defense rose up again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll take any way to – I'll never apologize for an ugly win right now, especially after what we've gone through for the greater part of the last 5 years, but certainly all of last year, all those one-score losses. We'll take any win, 1 point or not. And to your point there earlier, Dave, it's 2 straight wins now. So you got –
Yep, absolutely.
We stacked some wins.
Yeah. All right, Hunk. Well, before we take a deep dive on what happened at Rutgers and turn the page to Purdue, let's take care of our sponsors.
Absolutely. As always, we have our hailvarsity.com/subscribe. Use promo code REDCAST. You get $10 off your annual subscription to Hail Varsity, the premier Husker magazine, and great coverage there, part of the Hurrdat family. Next up is Alumni Hall with 2 Lincoln locations, downtown 1120 P Street, and then South Point Pavilions right behind Barnes & Noble. You can find them alumnihall.com/Nebraska-Cornhuskers. And Smack and Smooch, our good friends, Shane and Lauren Elwood, custom shirts, specialty items. You can find them at Smack and Smooch on Facebook and Twitter. I think Rob said Instagram last week. If you do that, you won't find them. They're not on there yet, but they might be at some point. You never know. But as of right now, find them on Facebook and Twitter.
Awesome. All right. Well, we mentioned Rob was out in Rutgers. I think he's still flying back right now. Is that right, Honky?
That's correct. That's why we're missing Rob tonight. Well, I don't know if we're missing him, but that's why he's not on tonight.
Well, I'm not, but I kid. The Raiders are actually playing the Chiefs right now, so he's probably at an airport one way or the other. watching his beloved Raiders actually beat the Chiefs right now. So we'll see how that goes as the show goes on. Hawk, do you want to dive into some of the tweets of the week? Because Rob did produce a lot of great content.
Absolutely. And it really does start, we kid about Rob, but the guy, he worked it, man. He was all over the place. He got like an extra, 200 or so followers on Twitter over the course of the weekend.
Nice.
It was great. I mean, and he was posting videos, and he got photos of both touchdown catches, like right in action. It was well done. But here he is last night in review, courtesy of our man on the sidelines, Redcast Rob. And it was the photos of the two catches. And then there's Mickey Joseph in the press conference. And then there's Will Compton. He was on the sideline there too for it. So he got a photo with him. And there was other photos as well that we could have taken. But he did a really great job, and he had a blast doing it. So that was a lot of fun. One of the photos he took was this post-game one. He said, I wasn't sure or not if I should post this, but to heck with it. The student section at Rutgers was throwing corn at us after the game. And by us, I mean anyone near the Nebraska team when they were leaving the field. Then he tags Rutgers, says, classy Rutgers, you deserve a tag here. And there's a photo of a little piece of corn laying on the turf. Now, Rob, he's still fairly new to the fandom the way that we know it. So he probably didn't experience the oranges that were laying on the fields back.
The frozen oranges.
The frozen oranges 35 years ago. But there was some video of Nebraska players that were, talking with the fans a little bit. And I think Rob wanted to show that there were things incoming from the fan base too that was being thrown at the fans. And so he wanted to make sure that was documented. But good times.
Yeah. Boomer, was that like a half a cob of corn, right? I mean, they couldn't even get full corn cobs. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I was questioning where they sourced that from. Did they go to KFC beforehand and get an extra value meal, or Long John Silver still sell corn?
And did they eat it? It looks like it's kind of partially eaten.
Well, you get hungry in those kind of games, Dave. I mean, you see what refreshments cost. What were they charging? Like $14 for a beer? I mean, geez, you got to pinch your pennies somehow there when you're at Rutgers. So
that's
I don't see what choice they had. So.
Yeah, right. I mean, you got the KFC value meal, and you get the corn cob on the side, and you're like, I'm just going to throw this thing. All right. Well, I mean, we are. Oh, go ahead, Onk. That's great. I was just going to head to the fact that a lot of people are celebrating that we are in first place in the West right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Husk guys here. I mean, you can always count on them for some good content. And this new, I don't know, every week there's a new Twitter thing, and whatever, there's the Pope holding up something, and then there's, whatever the thing he's holding up
the
is
Eucharist.
In the top. Yeah, so the Eucharist in the top left here is the Big Ten West standings, and sure enough, as Coach Joseph said at the beginning, we are in fake first place, but we are in first place right now. We're tied with Purdue, and who else is in Illinois as well. So
those three would be all 2-1 right now. Yep.
All 2-1. So this is a huge battle coming up this weekend in West Lafayette. And then this was fun. During the game itself, Big Game Boomer was having just a heyday with Nebraska on Friday night, just how terrible we were. And here he goes. I've never seen a blue blood steep as low as Nebraska. They can't score against mighty Rutgers. I don't know if they'll ever be relevant again. And so, I like to take they can't score against someone. And the next day I went, you've never 49-2, because as we know, Big Game Boomer is a big Oklahoma fan. And Redcast Abby, she sent out this, and this was trolling at its finest. And I got to give her a ton of credit here. Using one of Big Game Boomer's own polls, she said teams that scored more points than Oklahoma in week 6. And well, it's everyone. So well done, Abby. We love you, Big Game Boomer. You were very kind to us. You called us the best Husker follow on Twitter, so we appreciate that. But we had to give you a little bit of ribbon back because you've given it to the Husker Nation quite a bit here. So Oklahoma got shut out, but I'm sure the Sooners will get back.
Yeah, Boomer, our Boomer, not that Boomer. You always got to be careful on Twitter on saying stuff because it can bite you back really quick, right? I mean, I'm sure he never thought in his wildest dreams that Oklahoma would lose 49-0 the next day, right?
Yeah, it's certainly a medium that can amplify mistakes or just casual faux pas and things like that, and just be beaten mercilessly with it, if it goes awry and, hits the right fan base. So, yeah, watch yourselves on Twitter, folks. It's fun.
And using producer Skip's PSA that he created, SOOT, stay off of Twitter. I've gotten very good at when we do lose. So, we'll inevitably lose here at some point. And then, as big game boomers, you're going to get back at us. I don't know. I'm not going to be on Twitter for the next 48 hours after our next loss, but I'm going to stay off of it. And by the way, the other thing is you can't hurt us. Husker fans have been beaten down so many ways for so many years now. You cannot hurt us with conventional weapons or anything. We've seen it all. We've experienced every loss. So, but it is fun when someone who hasn't, in Oklahoma, to their credit, they haven't experienced losses like that in a long time. So when they do have one, yeah, we're going to let them hear about it.
Yeah, honestly, another way you could have trolled them was to say the last time they got beat that bad was by Nebraska back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think their last 2 losses to us while in, probably in that 96,
97. I was at the game in Norman in 96 when we put up more than 70 points on them.
73-21, if I remember it.
And then I think their worst loss ever was the 250th win for Coach Osborne. And it was 69-7. Does that sound right? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
That's their worst all-time program defeat ever.
Yeah. So we got that going for us.
Which is nice.
All right, guys. Anything else before we slip on our scarlet-colored glasses?
Go for it.
All right. Scarlet-colored glasses is where we talk about all things Husker football, kind of program-wide, big picture view of where Nebraska's at. And we're 3-3. We're not the complete laughingstock of college football right now with 2 wins. But we turn to the second half of the season, and there's a lot of work to be done to get to a bowl, or if we want to dream big, win the West. Right here is Swobe's awesome graphic here. What's our record for the next 6 games? And here are the next 6 helmets we'll be facing, starting with the Purdue Boilermakers there next Saturday night. Then a bye week, I believe, right? And then Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa. That's, different than what we kind of expected going into the season right now, right, Boomer? I mean, you think about that list, and the back half, the Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa looked pretty daunting. Right now, Iowa and Wisconsin seem like they have some chinks in their armor. Wisconsin did bounce back nicely versus a completely inept Northwestern team. I don't know how we lost to that team at this point. I just don't understand it. But Jim Leonhard is already building his resume to be the head coach of Wisconsin. And Iowa did lose to Illinois, and Brett goes 2-0 versus kind of his, the closest programs to his heart. And, Michigan looked a little bit vulnerable this week as well until pulling away. And, Minnesota and Illinois and Purdue actually look like maybe the toughest of the West out there. So what are your thoughts about the next 6 games?
Boy, it's so hard to accurately predict anything anymore with this season. You can go if Rob were here, you can go the full Kool-Aid on drinking optimist, think, hey, we can win all these things. And then, you get that in your head after a couple of wins. And then, the realist person, well, let's pump the brakes a little. It was Indiana and Rutgers, 2 wins we needed to have, but we didn't look great in those wins. So it's tough to say. I mean, I honestly don't know what to make of it. I want to see how this team plays against these next 2 opponents. I think will tell us. I mean, obviously, out of 6 games, 2 opponents are going to tell you a lot of those. But these 2, I mean, no offense to Rutgers, but they just fired their offensive coordinator. They're one of the few teams that made Iowa's offense look good so far this year. They were bad. I mean, there's no 2 bones about it. They were not good on offense. I think I played a few series at quarterback because they can't figure out who they wanted.
Did you throw one of the picks, Boomer? Is that it?
Yeah.
Robbie threw one of those picks. I can't tell.
Yeah, exactly. So, but so it's hard to get a great read on where we're at. As a program, it looks like we've taken some steps, but again, how well are we going to match up against the more competent teams in the conference, which this last 6 should be? And Wisconsin, like you said, though, I don't know what to make of them because they looked awful for most of this season. This last game, heck, Mertz even looked serviceable. So I don't know. Was it just a function of that opponent, Northwestern, being complete garbage, or have they found something to improve on? So it's really hard. But I think these next 2 games will tell you just how the season's going to end. I mean, if you go out and get walloped by Purdue and Illinois, then, well, it's going to be tough sledding. If you can beat one or both of those teams, then you can be in any one of those games. So kind of where I'm at.
Boomer, let's run with that idea. And Honky, I want you to jump in here next. So we've got those 6 games left, and we are 2-1 in first place. I keep on saying it as often as I can, because when else are we going to get to say we're in first place? I don't know. Maybe the rest.
Never
of the
been
year.
able to say it, Dave.
Oh my goodness! No wonder I want to say it all the time. It just sounds so nice. We're 2-1, first place in the West. No big deal. But how do we stay in first place, right? I mean, I don't know how the math shakes out here, Boomer, but realistically, let's say if we're just being pragmatic, that we're going to lose to Michigan, right? So another non-division loss, but that's one of those things where if you keep on winning the West games, you could potentially be in line to be in that first place conversation because you start winning a lot of tiebreakers, right? Do you think that we need to go, and then we're just being pie in the sky here, do you need to go 7-2 to win the West? Probably not. 6-3 though, maybe, but if you need to be 6-3, you probably need to be winning a lot of those tiebreakers. Which team would you most want to lose to, actually? Or can you get to 5-4 and have some crazy tiebreakers that get you in and win the West?
Well, there might be. I mean, who knows? To your point, we're 2-0 in the East so far, and that's been very helpful to us. I mean, I was rooting for Maryland like crazy last week against Purdue.
Sure, yeah.
And here's Iowa sitting at 1-2 and struggling, and they get a bye week and they have to go to Columbus in 2 weeks. So, it's worked out in our favor to play the East that we've played up to this point, Indiana and Rutgers. That helped us get a little bit of momentum going. But I think it's interesting. When we looked at the schedule before the season started, there was a couple of narratives going on. Number one was we've got to have success in October. I mean, darn near, you got to go 4-0. You got to get through those 4 teams because what a gauntlet at the end. And as of right now, and it's very early, but Nebraska, Illinois, Purdue are all on top of the West. October almost looks on paper right now to be tougher than November, minus the Michigan game. I think everything here, we have to take Michigan out of those 6, put them, kind of compartmentalize them into their own different category. They are a different beast than the other 5. If I'm thinking realistically and pragmatically and all that, I see 5 games that I think we can win. Any one of those 5, minus let's keep Michigan away. Those other 5, we can win them all. We can lose them all. That's where I kind of see it. And I see this game this weekend is huge. I mean, it's big for momentum. We are clearly an underdog, but who cares? I mean, we're a double-digit underdog. Cool. We were a double-digit favorite for the first 3 games, and we lost 2 of them. So I don't care about that right now. Keep getting better, keep playing better, and keep stacking wins. Purdue, this would be a huge victory. You get this win, and then you get a bye week to heal up for Illinois coming to town. And, man, this could be a really memorable October. And all we said coming into the season for Frost, now as it turns out, he's not here to enjoy this, but for Frost, we were like, what was a non-negotiable is we had to be competing for the West heading into November. After that Oklahoma game, we thought there was no chance in hell that was ever going to happen. All of a sudden right now, there feels like there's a realistic chance that we could be heading into November competing for the West.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all starts this week, though, right, Boomer? I mean, like to Hockey's point, we're a 13, earlier today, 14-point underdog. We haven't won one of those games in 20-some years, I think, or some crazy stat like that. I can't remember when it was like a bowl game back in the early 2000s, maybe against Michigan, where we were a double-digit dog and actually won. And I'd imagine, I'm just looking at these helmets, how many of these games are we the underdog in?
Yeah, boy. Well, I'd say probably at least 4, if not 5, maybe. I would just, if you were putting them right now.
That's the thing.
Probably, definitely Purdue, Minnesota, Michigan, maybe even Illinois, depending on how Illinois looks this week. I don't know, but
That's
Wisconsin
exactly right.
and Iowa are going to be coin tosses, but Iowa. This is just for spread purposes. Those would be my guesses there. I don't think we'd be favorites in most of those, but
the sports books in Vegas,
the
sports books in Vegas use something similar to a power index to make their spreads, and they tweak as necessary. But the ESPN Football Power Index, Honky put this together from a tweet. Currently projected to land at 4-8. And only has about a 9% chance to get to 6 wins because
you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, that's right. We're likely an underdog on most of these next 6 games. Now, I would say that there's 2 or 3 of them that close to pick 'em, right? I could see that where if Minnesota and Iowa maybe struggle down the stretch, same thing Wisconsin. Any of the home games, I think in particular. So that would be Wisconsin, for example. Minnesota, is that right? Honk?
Yeah,
and Illinois. Home game. Yeah,
and Illinois. Those 3 at the home games probably are where you could potentially pull off some upsets, just from a statistical standpoint, where we would be slated.
Yeah, and I think another thing you brought up, why like Purdue this week is so critical, just based on how can you get to win the West, regardless of how game shakeout is. They're pretty well done with their crossovers. The only crossover East team they have left is Indiana at the end of the year. So they lost to Penn State early, and that's their conference loss, and they could have won that, and then they just got away with Maryland. They don't have anybody tough remaining on their schedule outside of the West. So like Wisconsin, I think still plays Maryland. Minnesota has Penn State, I think, coming up in a couple of weeks. So there's still chances for some of the other teams to get knocked off, and lose some big games where we still have Michigan and Purdue doesn't. So,
well, this is where I'm no good on the Betcast. Is that I hate looking
at stats. We're not good either, Honky. So.
Well, I know, but I hate looking ahead 6 weeks because it's such a moving target. I mean, the FPI says something this week, but it'll say something completely different next week. Or they have you at 7.5 wins coming into the season. Now they have us at 4-8. But you take it one game at a time. And what I want to see is constant improvement. We're going to talk about this when we get to throwing the bones and scoring explosion. What's more important to me is to see constant improvement from week to week right now, which is what we're starting to see, especially on the defensive side. This week, you go out and we beat – this is a one-week season right now. You got to beat Purdue. You beat Purdue, and we come back and we revisit that same graphic, and we even revisit that FPI, and it totally changes, right? Now, all we have to do is go to West Lafayette and beat Purdue, right? I mean, easier said than done.
Big deal.
But that's what we have. What we'll talk about in the offense and defensive breakdown are the things that I think that we need to do to be able to beat Purdue, and I think we're more than capable of doing that. But I'm ecstatic, to be 100% honest with you. I'm ecstatic with where we're at right now, considering where we were 4 weeks ago. The difference in play, in speed of play, in just the competency out there. I mean, we look like we know what we're doing, and I don't want to hear about who the opponent was because we played really bad against some bad opponents already earlier this year. And
yes, that is true.
There's been a marked difference in level of play by us, and now it's actually I'm really looking forward to Purdue because it's going to be a huge challenge, and I think we're starting to play well enough to where it's time to go and take on a team like the Boilermakers, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the Husker Hex where the Northwestern Oklahoma and Georgia Southern are combined 1-11 after playing us? That's quite the stat there. There's no doubt.
Yeah, Georgia Southern's the only one to have a win since beating us.
That is some rich stuff right there. All right, guys. Anything else before we talk a little head coaching search? All right, let's talk about future head coaches at the University of Nebraska. We're gonna have one for next year. We don't know who that one will be, but we have been having some fun with the coaching draft. Boomer, I think you had this graphic up last week, and somehow I'm missing a couple. I'm pretty sure if we roll back the tape, Blake Anderson is one of those that I'm missing, and maybe Gary Patterson. I can't remember.
Yeah, that takes work, Dave. We're not doing that.
Yeah, maybe our listeners can go back and see if I picked anyone else. I think there was a confusion with the snaking draft at some point, And but regardless, I'll point out a name that is on my list, who became available today, and Matt Rhule, fired from the Carolina Panthers. Apparently, NFL teams have even more money than Big Ten teams because Matt Rhule has been fired. He still has $40 million left to be paid by Carolina. So that's it's a lot of money. And so he doesn't need to work, but he is available right away, right, Boomer? And Matt Rhule's been rumored as a potential candidate for from the get-go.
Yeah, his name has come up, and he did have success at the college level, which is different than some head coaches that you see that names get bannered about from the NFL, bring them in, but that doesn't always translate very well, as Nebraska history can suggest. Just because you had some vague success at the NFL level doesn't necessarily mean you translate to a college coach. We should know that more than anybody. But yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't know. Do I love the idea of Matt Rhule here? I don't know. So that's a tough one, actually. I know he's
a Penn State guy, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah,
Pennsylvania, right?
And a few people have said he looks like Honky a little bit. So that's come up on.
Maybe we could do a body switch. Honky gets in there, calls the plays. Yeah. That'd be great. He's an offensive focused coach, even though he's had great defenses and he kind of builds from the offensive defensive lines out, which I think Honky would love. Success at Temple and then at Baylor. Inherited programs that were, in weird spots, but not necessarily disasters either time. The Baylor one obviously was the Art Briles situation and, lost a lot of players and went like 2-10 his first year and then kind of built it back up. But obviously a highly regarded coach that just didn't work out in the NFL, and that happens more often than not when you do the college and NFL transition. Does he want to come back? I don't know. Honky, what are your thoughts on Matt Rhule?
I don't really know a whole lot about him, to be honest with you. Yeah, he's not on my radar.
Besides, he looks a little bit like you.
Yeah, he is my doppelganger, I guess, or hanger, or whatever they call it. I think it's interesting when he took over at Baylor. It's different, but it's akin, at least, to taking over what like O'Brien did at Penn State, like a really tough situation that you're walking yourself into. And I don't know what the perfect coach here is. Boomer has said in the past he thinks the guy has to have X amount of head coaching experience. I don't want to put any limitations on anything right now. I want the right guy, and that's the biggest cop out of just saying whoever. I mean, Trev has this list of things he wants, and if maybe the guy doesn't have as much head coaching experience, or maybe somebody doesn't have as much college experience, or whatever it is, that doesn't seem to make him the perfect one. Well, whatever it is that makes him the right guy. In Trev's mind, that's what I'm looking for here. So Rhule, I don't know the first thing really. I don't know a whole lot about him. I know what he did a little bit at Temple, a little bit at Baylor, but this is going to be a whole different situation in those places too. I mean, Nebraska. I think that one of the most important things is whoever's going to be the next guy. I really do think it's crucial that there's a couple of guys that are on staff right now stay on staff to next year. And I think that's going to be important for whoever the next coach is. And assuming that it's not going to be Joseph. But if it's not Joseph, then next year we have a couple guys on staff that we really need to be able to have some continuity with what this team is doing right now. I go back to, Pliny getting hired here and them keeping Watson, keeping Gilmore, even for a couple of years. That helped with the transition when he had a lot of things to fix defensively and all that. Yep. It helped a lot to have a transition like that. And, my thoughts towards Bush and towards Mickey and what Mickey's doing with recruiting, what Bush does, period, recruiting, defense, special teams, wherever you want to put them, just outstanding coaches. I think there are guys that are on the staff that are going to be able to assist whoever ends up getting hired.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not uncommon that a handful of coaches, from a former coaching staff transitions to a new coaching staff just for those purposes, exactly, especially from a recruiting standpoint. Doesn't mean they may not be there forever. This instance, you may have somebody like Mickey and Bill Bush, who are obviously have Nebraska ties and may want to actually stay as long as they work well with a new coaching staff. Hard to say, right? Really hard to say, but it's definitely not unprecedented and could make a lot of sense. No doubt about that.
And
it's something
that's happened. A couple of our last coaching changeovers have been full house, switches when Riley took over and when Frost took over. I mean,
never understood
there was absolutely no continuity. And no matter what you thought about the prior staff, there's still good coaches that, there's still one or two guys, what if Trent Bray would have stuck around on defense or, there's a whole list of things like that we have to learn from our prior mistakes. And moving forward, I mean, that's one of the reasons why these next 6 games are big too, to me, is that there's still some good things going on right now. And we don't want to get to the end of the year and then just, wipe it all away because we hire XYZ coach and let's start over from scratch.
It feels like there is building some momentum there in the continuity, but so let's have one round of the draft here. Everybody look at their boards really quick. Honky, you can just say any name you want because I know you don't play the game. But we have to get the name right. That is the key. You're trying to get the name right. Boomer, why don't you start off first?
Oh God. God, what's even left out there? We're trying to make this quick and painless. Let's go. It ain't gonna happen. Let's go Mike Gundy.
I was gonna take Mike Gundy.
Yeah,
you took my pick, Boomer.
Well, I can trade for this and another pick to be named later. So
I do. I mean, Mike Gundy has Oklahoma State going again. I didn't expect it. Doesn't seem like I have a great team, but they are undefeated and looking pretty good out there. Let's see. Let's double check who else we got here. You know what? I will go and I'll have fun here and take number 7 off the established Power 5 coaching list, Brett Bielema.
Ooh, interesting.
Well, maybe we have more money than Illinois. No, we probably have the same amount of money, but you never know.
Well, he's probably got a lot of red stuff still in his closet, so you could probably, that transition would be easy. So yeah,
it's true. Honestly, Honky, if you want Brett Bielema, I would switch with you. I've got another name on the list now that I just saw that I'd want to throw out just for discussion purposes. So,
well, I have a name, but there's no way in hell he's getting picked, and I'm not even saying I want him, but
go for it.
Well, I like Craig Bull just for the altitude.
There we go, Craig Bull.
He would know how to prepare.
I have his name up here somewhere, I think. There he is,
he's on the list. Yeah,
Craig Bull.
All right, who's auto drafting for Rob?
What's that?
Ooh, I'll auto draft for him. I want to pick the least likely candidate. So let's see here. Let's see who he has already. Rob. Yeah, it's a horrible list of.
Well, he's got John Gruden and Sean Payton. That's good.
Yeah, leave it to Rob. Let's go with
David Shaw might be available before long. So.
Yeah, that's the name I actually was going to throw out. I'm gonna throw him Will Muschamp because I don't like. Whoops, sorry, I don't like Rob.
Well, I'll tell you what. Give me David Shaw just to because Craig Bull's not going to get it. So, and we actually want to try. If I understand the premise of this day, we actually want to try to have the name of the guy somewhere on our list.
Correct.
So that we can claim that we've said it.
We're bound to hit it eventually. So
yeah.
All right. So Honky's taking David Shaw, and Rob's taking Will Muschamp.
Yep, we got it done. All right.
The David Shaw thing is intriguing. I was listening to some of the local radio shows, and they're talking about diversity in coaching and all this type of stuff. And they're like, it's difficult because this is a current pool of candidates. If you're trying to have someone with experience, there's not a lot of African American coaches in the Power 5 that seem like they would fit the profile. David Shaw is one of those, and I would, 4 years ago, anybody would have jumped at David Shaw. He struggled though. Now it's interesting. I think you look at Stanford and you look at Northwestern. Georgia Tech has already fired their coach. Some of these schools that have the higher academic standards may continue to struggle post in the NIL era because it's harder to get transfers from the portal into schools from an academic standpoint. Right. It's just, but they still lose them. Right. I mean, like Northwestern lost a starting safety to Notre Dame last year because he good enough to go to Notre Dame and he wanted to do that. But it's harder to bring someone in to replace him of equal, talent or value. Right. Because it's just not that easy to find. Your pool of candidates is that much smaller. David Shaw is a Stanford man through and through. Right. Dream job for him. Let's get paid well out there for West Coast pricing, I would imagine. But maybe he thinks that he's tapped out there. He can't go any further. And his record shows that. And I don't think it would be a splash higher at this point from the fan base, because I mean, he's, has the same record as Scott Frost the last 4 years practically. But he sure looks like. Go ahead.
Did he have any connection to Scott Frost being Stanford guys? Were they there at the same time?
I don't think so. Think so. But Boomer, I don't know if you can do any quick research on that. That's a good point. I never really thought about that.
He was very successful, though, to your point, 10 years ago or whatever, 5-10 years ago.
Multiple Rose Bowls, top 5 finishes, obviously the Heisman Trophy candidacy of Christian McCaffrey. And you're talking about building off of what Harbaugh had there with the big offensive lines and the run game. I mean, really sound coaching seems like.
Always go back to Stanford from 91 to 94.
So you would have been there when Frost was there in 93, 94.
Yeah, that's funny. I never thought about that.
They would have doubled up a little bit. I just think it's
unlikely.
It's important to keep framing this discussion around what we do know Trev talked about the day that he fired Frost, and it was, we want guys that are going to be coaching toughness here, and we're going to win in the trenches and the grinder. We're going to grind. I want a guy that's going to be there, and so all of these guys that we talk about, we have to keep applying kind of what we do know Trev is looking for towards that person, at least to the best of our knowledge. Again, like I said, with a guy like Rhule, I don't know what Rhule is from a grinding standpoint or any of that stuff, but we'll no doubt find out more, I'm sure, and learn more about these guys here in the coming weeks as it gets a little clearer. Is there anyone you think that's fallen off the list? Like I was talking with a guy today saying Campbell's done. Campbell's not on the list now because of their losses. I mean, do you buy that?
No, I mean, that was the exact same conversation with David Shaw. You could argue Shaw shouldn't be on this list because if he's announced as the head coach, on November 29th or whatever, and he went 4-8 this year, and he went 4-8 last year, and went 2-9, whatever, they're going to be like, "Are you kidding me? You just hired some guy who has 4 straight losing seasons." Doesn't say anything about what he did the 6 years previous to that. Matt Campbell's kind of the same boat. He might go 7-5 this year, but what he's accomplished at Iowa State, a place that before he got there hadn't done anything compared to what he did, is you have to look at the entire resume, right? So would it not land well with some portion of the fan base? Yeah. Does that mean he's the wrong guy? That's probably too much of a recency bias on making your decision. I guess to me, and Boomer, tell me if I'm wrong, but because you're in the insurance industry, but to me, this is all an exercise in like risk mitigation or risk management, right? You're trying to actually, through all this criteria that Honky is, saying that Trev is using, essentially, is all you're trying to do is take the least risky choice here that you have available, right? Every candidate we can find has a fault of some sort, right? We just found, Matt Rhule hasn't beat a top 25 team, right? David Aranda's only been there for 3 years, and he inherited a good situation at Baylor. Lance Leipold, won mostly at the Division III level and doesn't have that much Power 5 experience, and it's the Big 12. And will his offense work here? You can find a fault in everything, but when you look at the criteria, you're simply trying to find coaches that have the least likelihood of failure or the most likelihood of success, right? And that's all you're trying to do. It's literally an actuary table, I guess, in my mind.
I think of the right guy statement that Trev is looking for, whoever the right guy is. And it's not about trying to find an offensive guy, defensive guy, a Power 5 guy, Group of 5, pro guy, college guy. We've done it all, right? Nebraska guy, not Nebraska. None of that matters. We need the right guy. And I was trying to think with Joseph. Joseph doesn't have the coaching history, certainly that Boomer stated that would match what Boomer's looking for, right? But at the same token, we've talked about these last 6 games. What would it take to get Joseph to almost be a non-negotiable? Like, you have to hire him. I don't think it would be 3-3. It wouldn't be just getting to a bowl game, although that would be amazing. That would be an amazing feat to get us to a bowl game. But I don't see being 6-6 anything where we're like, okay, it's definitely Joseph. All right, he goes 4-2, so now we're 7-5. Hey, you're getting closer there. Probably not quite enough yet. He goes 5-1. And we finished the season 8-4, and we've beaten everyone except for Michigan, it's a close loss to Michigan. We're 8-4. And what is the cutoff point where we're like, whoa, what this guy did was pretty amazing. On top of that, you do have the Nebraska ties, which are, I think you can factor in at some point with enough wins. You have the Trev ties with them. I go back to the Big Red wrap-up before the season started. Trev is getting interviewed by Michael Severe in North Stadium. And he's asked a question about Frost. Trev does. And Trev says everything right. He does, he plays it right and says the right things about, Scott all offseason. Then he was asked a question about Mickey, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Mickey, like my buddy, I played with him. Like there was a different his face lit up talking about Mickey compared to Frost. Just background, knowing him and everything. You mentioned David Shaw with the diversity thing. Obviously, Joseph. There's a lot of things. At what point does enough positive things happen in this season where we seriously look at Mickey as a long-term candidate?
That's a good question. Some of that, I think, does come down to, what conversations has he had with Alberts? Is this something Joseph wants? Does he want to be a head coach? I mean, because not everyone wants to be. I mean,
we've heard things both sides on that, haven't we?
Especially, if your love is recruiting and kind of real hands-on with players, head coaches can't really be that because they have all these other roles they have to do. As we heard with Frost, you've got to be that CEO of an organization. You can't be, on the road recruiting all the time. You can't be focusing on, just the wide receivers or just this. You've got so much more on your plate that not every coach wants to be a head coach. I mean, it's certainly possible Mickey may have just taken this job on knowing I need to write this and I'm a person who can do it, but I don't want to do this long term. I'm not saying he does or doesn't, but it's certainly a possibility. Yep. That's the first thing you have to consider. Yep. Does he want it? Maybe he does. And then if he does, and we do have to start trying to consider what is the cutoff for, would we call this success or not? Is it a win total or is it just looking a certain way? I mean, I don't want to go to the whole close losses thing again. We've already had enough of that, but that is a good question. I don't know. Like you said, I don't know if 6-6 would be enough, to get there, especially, with what we've, talked about this whole season just being goofy with the teams we've played and whatnot, although he was handed a pretty deep hole to get out of, when it started. But, I mean, that is a possibility. If you are in that 7-5 or 8-4, I mean, if you're Alberts, does your hand get called? You not have a choice and you have to hire him. I don't know. So that's something else you have to look at.
Well, I wouldn't think of it as have to at that either, because if we were 8-4, I think fans would be.
Well, that's what I mean. There could be a lot of fan pressure to do that. Maybe Trev didn't, that wasn't his plan, but do you kind of don't have a choice at that point? I don't know.
I would say that going 8-4 obviously enters Mickey into very legitimate conversation, because now he's done something. Let's say if that somehow wins you the West, he's just won a division title. How many other coaches we're looking at has done that in a Power 5 league? Not too many, probably, right? So even if you're playing for that on the last day of the season, that'd be quite the accomplishment. So, but just the record alone, this is just like saying, well, just because Leipold is going to win 9 games this year at Kansas, he immediately obviously would have a great success in Nebraska. And there's a lot of other elements there. Dave Aranda won 11 games last year. Well, that means he'll win 11 games next year at Nebraska. No, that's not how it works, right? Matt Campbell went 7-5. He's off my list. No, I mean, I think you would have to say then, okay, Mickey's now you're proven that you can be a head coach here, but I want to know how you're going to move this program forward, right? Now it's the interview process, right? And he's had a lot of time to sell that to Trev the whole time, but you wanting to understand, like, okay, you haven't been a head coach ever before. Thanks for the success this season. Now let's talk about how we're going to do this together over the next 5 years to establish the culture and the long-term winning that we want to see at Nebraska, right? So what are you going to do from a recruiting perspective? What are you going to do from player development? How are you going to fill out the rest of your coaching staff? All these type of things that you're going to expect a head coach to know how to do. What are you going to change with your practice schedule? How are you going to handle, all that type of stuff, right? And then Trev will be like, all right, and then I'm just going to compare Mickey to my other candidates who I'm going to interview and understand how they would go about, building long-term success in Nebraska, right? Just going 8-4, it won't be enough. It shouldn't be just that thing. If this is a deeply analytical analysis, is that repetitive, Boomer? But of who you think is going to have the most likelihood of success at the head coaching position in Nebraska, you have to take all that into consideration. It's not just one thing, right?
Well, and to your point there, Dave, that's once again to go back to what Trev said on the day when he fired Frost was that we're going to create a process here. We're going to create a process and we're going to write down our values. And I mean, he's going to use these 2 months to clearly identify what he wants. Because to your point, it isn't just as simple as 8-4, you're in, 9-3 at Kansas, you're in, 7-5 at Iowa State, you're out. It's not as simple as that. He is writing down, at least in my mind, he's writing down what he wants in a coach, and it's clearly defined. And then, he'll go and look through 5, 10 coaches, whoever, I don't care, 15, 20 coaches, and match them up as who aligns to what I'm looking for here. And it might be someone that the general population wants, and he's sitting there saying that's not what I'm looking for. That goes back to that right guy thing, and I can't define what that is, but it's just the right guy. Bob Stoops at Oklahoma took over a dumpster fire, right, and had no coaching experience, but he was the right guy at one moment, and popular hire too. Don't get me wrong, but still, it's just the right guy. And sometimes the right guys, we thought Scott Frost was the right guy, and it didn't work out. So there's no guarantees no matter what.
Well, one random thing, maybe to kind of tie this up a little bit, something that I thought about today was with that right guy idea is, we've said before, and it's probably pretty obvious that if you're going to become the head coach in Nebraska or any really Power 5 program, head coaches have an ego, right? I mean, they're like, I'm going to get that done. I can get that done. I know I can do this, right? You're not going to take this job without having an ego to say that I'm the guy to get it done. But if you think about T.O., right, what was so amazing about him is that he had this amazing track record, but he was so, unassuming, right? Like it was never about him, right? It was about the players and the process and building up his players to be young men and pillars of society and all this type of stuff, right? It was a philosophical approach to building that culture. It wasn't about him ultimately, right? He was actually not about himself. So he believed he could obviously coach at Nebraska. He did it for 25 years, but it wasn't about like him, right? So I would be interesting from a Trev Albert standpoint, and you think of that criteria, and Mickey Joseph kind of fits that mold of like, hey, this is not about me. It's about the N on the helmet, right? You need to find a coach that gets that, believes in themselves, but also believes in the bigger mission of the athletic department and the university, right?
Well said. Well said.
Yeah. All right, guys. Another good conversation. We keep knocking those head coaching talks out week by week. Let's ready to throw the bones, Honk?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. We are throwing the bones, where we talk all things Husker defense. We got the nice image there of Bill Bush from Swobes looking sharp there. And obviously a lot of improvement, right, Honk? I mean, it's just been an amazing transformation, and the defense has been simplified. Still not perfect, right? Some missed tackles this week. But again, another second half shutout.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, what I'm looking for right now, and this is something we've said for 4 years on the Redcast until we stopped saying it, but I want to start bringing it back again. I want to see progress, because it actually matters right now to me. I want to see progress from week to week. We've been practicing at a different pace for 4 weeks now under Joseph. More physicality with the lines, more tackling with the defense. And I want to see that improvement be shown on the field. It's far from perfect. And I will be the first one to admit that we benefit the last 2 weeks by playing Indiana and Rutgers versus if we would have had Michigan and Ohio State. No doubt we benefited by having those teams then. But that said, that doesn't mean that what this defense is doing doesn't go without merit. And I posted this to Twitter, and it was, how much different are the Blackshirts playing under Coach Bush against Rutgers and Indiana? And you gave up a total of 638 yards combined. That's 4 fewer than what they gave up to Georgia Southern. And we gave up less points as well combined to those two. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but we gave up less points to two FBS, Big Ten teams than we gave to Georgia Southern, who isn't a great team either. It's not about who the opponent was. Go back to the North Dakota game. Great opponent, right? FCS team. And Casey throws a pick on our side of the field, deep in our side of the field, gets returned to the 10-yard line, and they turn around and they score a touchdown right away on us. Untouched. Guy goes right into the end zone. That's North Dakota. Think of this game last week. They block a punt deep in our side of the field, and Blaze Gunnarsson makes a great effort play to make the tackle. How important is that tackle? Because that should have been a touchdown. That's a punt block, running in for a touchdown. Now we're down 17-0. Or whatever it would have been, 14-0 at the time, whatever it would have been. Point is, then our defense comes onto the field against Rutgers, a Power 5 offense, not an FCS offense.
Well,
and they hold them to a field goal. They hold them to a field goal. I mean, that's improvement. I don't care who the opponents are, because we've already played bad opponents and not done these things. Now we're doing them. So the improvement is more than apparent there. The tackling is definitely better. We've missed some tackles, but we've missed a lot less than what we were missing beforehand. And last but not least, you mentioned the word simplifying, Dave, and I think simplifying is key. We're going to talk about this when we get to the offensive side. But the other thing with simplifying is, how about just play your best players? How about just get your guys out there? I mentioned last week against Indiana, the last play of the game, or one of the last plays, a 3rd and long, and their guy had to throw the ball out of bounds because he got chased out of the backfield. And the guys that we had rushing him were Nelson, Tanner, and Mathis. We couldn't see those 3 guys couldn't make it on the field at the same time the first 4 games for some odd reason. Or if they did, they were dropping back into coverage and all that. Well, watch the last interception of this game. Hartzog's interception. Who's in the backfield? Tanner, Nelson, Mathis. At the very least, and Bush, you don't have to be a genius of a defensive coordinator. Bush is just looking at his guys going, who's my best rushers? Who are my best players? I'm going to get the best guys out there, and then I'm going to put them in the right spot. I'm not going to have them drop back and go into coverage. Let's get to the quarterback. That's what you're here for.
So, Honky, talk about that a little bit, because, Chins had made such progress over the first 4 years. And last year he benefited from a lot of defensive players with a lot of experience. Is it just simply if the players we had last year were doing this, would they be even that much better? Or is it just simply that Bush kind of evaluated the situation and to your point, just simply getting the best players on the field, just kind of it's a different defensive approach. Not saying like Chins was clueless on what he was doing. He just was trying to do the same thing he was doing the year before, but he didn't have the same personnel. I'm just trying to figure out why. Right?
The biggest issue I had in the first 3 games, when I was at the game at the you guys are up at the press box for the Georgia Southern one, when I was watching that defense, they just looked lost. There's video on the sideline that Kevin Suits at 10-11 took of that game of Ty Robinson, and he is every the swear jar would have been full, but it wasn't a lack of effort. He genuinely, it just looked like these guys were confused. And if I had any kind of indictment on Chinander, is that we arguably have more talent on defense this year than we did a year ago. That's what Michael Severe told us over the offseason. Yep. There's other guys that we've talked to that said that. I've got my own eyes. I can see that we have some talented players. We got some good guys out of the portal, but they were new to the system. And this is, you're playing young guys and guys that haven't played together. And it felt like we threw the book at them. Like, here's the playbook that we had with Ben Stilley and Doman and these safeties that have had 100 games. Yeah. We're going to run the same playbook. But the problem is we don't have guys that have played this long. We have guys that have played this much together. And so before I'm watching against Georgia Southern, I'm watching pre-snap. We can't line up against them, let alone tackle. That's a whole different thing, right? We're not even tackling in practice, but we can't even line up right. So those first 3 games, what I saw was a team that was lost, confused. The Oklahoma game concerned me even more because what I saw was a team that I thought they gave up. And I was concerned after Oklahoma that we might have a 2017 repeat, a team that just you lose them. Now you have NIL transfer portal guys that came in here. They've only been in Nebraska a couple months. They don't, who cares? I'm ready to, season's over, right? That is what, to me, I think what Bush and Joseph took over the most was they had to get these guys right up here to start the care again, to not give up. Yeah, to not give up, to care. And now we need to start fundamentally changing things the way that we're practicing, how we're tackling, all those things. The X's and O's. And what Bush started to do on defense is we're just going to rip it out. If we're not good at it, we're going to rip it out. If it's something that, if it's going to cause us extra time before a play to even line up, rip it out. Let's just start playing fast. And I think, again, I keep referencing offense. I've got a few ideas and suggestions I think that kind of apply towards the offense that use that same mentality. Sometimes you just got to rip a thing out and just say, let's just do this because we're better at this.
Yeah, that's fair. Personnel wise, the new defensive staff seems to be, playing a few different faces. Some of that's because of injuries, right? We've had some injuries, Luke Reimer and Quentin Newsome, a lot of stuff going on there. But like when Reimer's out, Ernest Hausman been injured, or is he just?
I haven't seen him playing as much since early in the year, but Mauga Clements has started getting in there.
Right. That was my point. He's actually playing, really stepped up right at the right time. And that's one of those things where I think the previous coaching staff really saw all the talent in Ernest Hausman, and he's going to be great. I think he's going to be great here very soon. But it seemed like he was drinking from the fire hydrant there in the first couple of games, and maybe it was a little too much, and hopefully he can bounce back soon. But I think maybe having a few more experienced players there in this situation has helped.
Mm-hmm. Well, think about.
I mean, Hill's another one of those, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the last game we had 3 sacks. It took us 2 or 3 games to get 3 sacks. I mean, at the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned Ty Robinson. I mentioned Ty Robinson and the frustration that he had on the sideline there against Georgia Southern. He looks like a different player the last 2 games, and there's a variety of reasons for it. The defense, the guys are playing smart. There's a sack that Ty Robinson had against Indiana last week. It was that, it looked like he came untouched and he destroyed the quarterback. Well, that was supposed to be a little screen pass, and O'Shawn actually deserves the credit. He got in kind of the way of it, got his hands up, and the quarterback had nowhere to throw it. And he gets destroyed by the guy who's not getting blocked because they're running a screen. But that's smart football. It's good defense where it's physical.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
These are huge steps for this defense to take. It is time now just for their own. They should have some confidence after 2 games now. They've won a close game now. That's big. That's a big confidence booster. They need to play a team like Purdue now. I really believe they need to. They need to take, if whatever confidence they have right now go and show it, prove it against that team. And if Purdue goes out and puts 800 yards on us and scores 50 points, then okay. I mean, I guess, you're back to the drawing board, but I feel like this team is starting to believe. I think they're playing well. I think we have plenty of talent. Talent has never been the issue. And if talent knows what they're doing and they're playing fast, man, I think this team could surprise some people in the West.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It all starts on Saturday there. You're right. Purdue, I don't know if we're going to do a big Purdue breakdown or not, but a little bit different of a team, right? You typically expect them to be throwing the ball all over the place, and Aiden O'Connell's a good quarterback, but they are running the ball more effectively, I think, and defensively has actually been a pleasant surprise as well. So it will be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, they've had 2 running backs that have had some success this year, and they had a tight end that went crazy last week against Maryland. So, in some regards, I mentioned during Rob's little pregame walk around Rutgers, one of the things I was kind of looking for us against Rutgers, what did I want to see? And it was simply that at the very least, Rutgers was going to want to be physical. I don't think Rutgers is going to be as good as really any of the other offenses that we're going to play the rest of this year. And I'm even including Iowa in that, shockingly. But they were at least going to give us a litmus test of, if they pushed us around and ran the ball for 250 yards on us, that was going to be a problem down the road if Rutgers could do that. And at least I saw a team that wanted to be physical against us, and I saw us in the trenches, defensive line-wise, match them. And that's a good sign right now. Everything's a baby step. I guess, again, you go back 1 month and you're watching Georgia Southern and North Dakota against us, gash us for big plays and all that. So everything's a step. But I've seen some really good things the last 2 weeks that the defense knows what they're doing. They're lining up fast. They're playing the right guys. If a guy gets hurt, someone's coming in and filling in the spot. The tackling's gotten, for the most part, much better. And, Rutgers, they hit a couple deep ones there on Hartzog, which is I mean,
early,
we ended up winning, and that's good. And he seems to, I love it. Joseph said, he's from Mississippi. He's a Mississippi kid. He'll get over it. He doesn't have a long memory. He'll just get over it. And by the end of the game, there's hearts like getting another interception. So that's awesome. I mean, that's someone that, get the bad plays out of your mind. But I'm sure Purdue will try to take advantage of him too this week. So.
Yeah. Boomer, you're good at the world is so dark. If Noah Vedral actually was healthy, would we have won that game?
It's a good question. I mean, he looked good, decent and serviceable in that first drive, especially. He had some nice passes, and they were there. And I don't know how healthy he was, and he kind of seemed to fall off a cliff. And
I know the ball there, Sam.
Yeah, and Honky would even commented about how good he looked, mobility wise, as a quarterback early on in that game. So it might have made a significant difference, but the game is played with people injured, so.
Yep, that's right.
That kind of is what it is. Just like with Indiana, they were missing receivers, and that's what it was. So, and you win the games. So
that pass early on that he threw was like on a dime. That one over Hartzog. That was a great throw. But then it seemed like I don't know if he got re-injured at all in the hand as the game went on.
Schiano actually explained it in his press conference. So he had a hand injury. I think he might have actually had some sort of surgery on it. And he doesn't have enough stamina. So he can throw the ball normally for a while, but then his hand essentially gets weaker and he can't grip it. So he could only do it for certain amounts of time.
So that's the guy you want in a quarterback. So good job, Rutgers.
And he couldn't hold the ball well enough to throw it later in the game, and that's why Simon was in there.
Gotcha. Because there was one throw he threw across the middle, and I mean, it just had nothing on it, and it was flipping all over the place. But so that's interesting to hear from Schiano. So if the quarterback, can't hold the ball, then you fire your offensive coordinator. It makes sense. So
That's right. That's right. Because your third string quarterback threw 3 picks. But it is. So before we go over the offense side of the ball, Boomer, there's not a lot to talk about with special teams because there was no field goals. And I don't think the kickoffs were that exciting. A lot of punts, though. Anything in particular you want to point out?
No, it was a lot of punting, and none of them were terribly egregious. Is this another week, though, that Bashini's kind of gotten injured a bit in a game? That's a little concerning. And, and a punt block is always something of concern, too. When we had 3 guys back there, they sent 4, and we didn't have an answer for it. So got to be ready for that because, it's quite likely some of the team's going to give that a shot this year now if they saw it can be done.
Yeah.
So we need to protect the punter better than we have been. That is something that is a concern. So. Yeah, we don't need punting injuries. That's for sure. We've seen where that's gotten us in years past, and it's not good. So,
yeah, I mean, speaking of what ifs, if we don't have a decent special teams the last couple of weeks, we might have lost both of those games. So, but we did. They're good enough, and we got 2 more victories. So, all right, let's head over to Scoring Explosion, where we talk all things offense. And Honky, I know you have been waiting for this all night. You've got some special video that we have, I believe, and you also want to highlight a very odd formation from Purdue that you saw.
Yeah, this is a Boomer. Maybe you can help me out here. What is this? I've never seen this. There appears to be like 7 or 8 guys on the offensive line.
They haven't done this since like the 1890s.
I was going to say, it looks like something I'd see on a drawing from a 1902. Football field guy.
The quarterback is
fascinating.
For the people listening on the podcast tomorrow and days after that, the quarterback is lined up under center, and then there looks to be like a player behind him in a straight line with his hand down. I don't know. He looks full of himself. I'll call him a fullback. And then there's a guy. It almost looks kind of like the letter I, so I'll just call this guy an I-back. But so I don't know what this formation would be called, but what I've been told is that Nebraska can't run this anymore because we're a spread attack. We're a shotgun spread team, so we can't get under center. We can't put double tights on the field and run out of the I formation. But Purdue, who they are a spread offense and they throw the ball around as much as anybody, they got into this at the goal line last week against Maryland, and they scored a touchdown on it. So I had to take a photo of it.
Is this not a Maryland I? You're in Maryland. You have to run the I formation. Is that right? No.
But that's just an I, not a Maryland.
Maryland I would have another running back there.
Yeah,
yes, I know. I was just joking.
But this does look like something akin to the day before you even had a position called a wide receiver. Everyone was just an end at this point.
Yeah,
it's very old school here.
That's right.
Yeah,
but
so-
very effective. I can't believe they scored. And isn't that right?
Yeah, so they scored
that
on this
was-
play, and for teams that struggle in short yardage situations or struggle in goal line situations, and how many times we've screamed at the top of our lungs about on 4th and 1s, and we get in the shotgun, it's like get under center, get a first down. Well, that's what Purdue did, and actually this last week we had a 4th and 1 where we emptied the backfield and threw an incompletion, much to the chagrin of a lot of Husker Nation. So. I just wanted to highlight that from Purdue. The other thing, and I always highlight this, is the run-pass ratio. And in this case here this week, we had 37 passes to 28 rushes. There was also a sack in there. So really, when you adjust that, that's 38 passes to 27 rushes. And, I mean, I'll be as blunt as I can be. And I was this way after the Northwestern game. So as far back as week 1, that's not a winning formula for us. Not as we continue to go on. We've got to be able to commit to a run. We've got to be able to do more things to be able to control clock. And if we're going to throw the ball around like that, I mean, I think that we're going to run into a lot of pitfalls here the next 6 games. And so, I mean, before I get into my film session here, I guess, Dave, I mean, do I make too much of a deal out of that, the run pass there, or are you on board with that?
No, yeah, no, I totally get it. We just need to be more effective running the ball, and I think to your point on previous shows, we need to be more creative with that because, I mean, look, I appreciate. I think it was last week in the Indiana game, you kind of came to the defense of the offensive line and said, hey, they are doing some more positive things, and they struggled again this week. But I think your point still stands that. If you have a offensive line that's having issues both with run blocking and pass blocking, you got to be more creative on how you're scheming that. You can't just expect them to form a perfect pocket for Casey when he's throwing the ball, or just hand off the ball to your running back with no deception whatsoever and expect that they're going to make a hole for him. So the coaching staff needs to help the offensive line, but they are still struggling, and we need to figure that out if we're going to win some of these 6 games.
Well, here, let's help them figure it out. And we've got a little film session here. We have 3 plays, and this is going to be on slow motion loop because we're going to spend a little time on each play, kind of breaking it down. For the people on YouTube here watching this live and over the next few days, you'll have a chance to kind of see the play over and over again as we talk about it. All these plays are going to be out of the same formation. It's the unbalanced set that we've been running, where we take one of our tackles, whether it's the left or the right, and we switch them over to the other side. So the first play that we're looking at right now is the first interception that Casey throws in the first quarter with a minute 20 left. And so right now the guy's catching the interception here. Casey gets destroyed in the backfield. Now, if you watch this, the left guard comes down and blocks down, and then we curl the center around to block the defensive end on the left, which in and of itself is already kind of a tough block there. Instead of just a normal pass pro, we're doing some kind of a stunt basically between guard and center to pass pro against the nose tackle and the defensive end. So up front, already we're having a little bit more of a challenge there blocking that. Now, in the backfield, we have a very lousy backfield play action. I don't even know if I'd call it a play action. So from the defensive side, we talked about the eyes. You have to use your eyes. We're not forcing the defense to have to do anything there. It's easy as pie that this is going to be a pass play. So that means the front 4, front 7, if you're blitzing, you're coming. If you're the defensive backs, you're going back. There's no deception up there. And Casey isn't allowed to step into this play because the defensive end gets around the center who curls around to make the block. He can't really step into the throw, so he underthrows it, gets intercepted. But for what it's worth, even if he would have got into the throw and got it over him, it's still probably either going to get intercepted by the safety coming over, or at the very least, the receiver is going to get destroyed. So
that one.
there's not a lot of good out of this play to begin with. And so this might be one of those ones where, we talked about on the defensive side with Bush that you rip out some plays, you rip out some things that, I don't see a lot of good. This might be one of those ones I'd kind of rip out and just say, there's not a lot that I see that I like out of this. Now, also the other thing is Casey takes the big hit. And remember that, because I've mentioned a lot, I want to get the QB run game going. I want the QB's legs being involved. I get told you can't do that because we got to keep him healthy. Well, keeping him in the pocket isn't a way to keep him healthy right now. Okay.
So can I ask you
go
before you leave this one, can you let me just? I always learn a lot from this. I hope our listeners learn a lot from Honky's X's and O's too here. But so in this instance, it's Trent Hickson, the center, who shifts over, and you look initially like he is squared up and is in a good position to block number 71, who comes in and hits Casey. It looks like there might be a little hands to the face there by the Rutgers defender, and Hickson kind of just olays him. He just goes right past Hickson suddenly. But I guess the question I have is like, why from an offensive scheme would you ask your center to do this? And, instead of just a regular straight up block, what's the advantage of sliding your center out like this in a pass pro scenario? I'm used to like offensive linemen getting pulled to run the ball, but what's the point here?
Well, and play number 3 will have an example of pulling a guy, but that's a great point. To me, it's very awkward. It's a lot to ask the guy to snap and make that little curl around anyways. So he's moving to the left to get to the guy, and the guy gets around him going the opposite direction, going inside him. To me, it just seems like if you just snap this ball and just have the center blocking the nose tackle and you have the left guard just blocking the D end who's lined up head up on him, that would simplify things, right? I mean, just at the very core of it, if you just do that alone, it seems to simplify it. I highlighted a play a couple games ago, one of the ones that we lost. So I think it might have even been like Georgia Southern, but we did one where we pulled Corcoran, the left guard. We pulled him all the way to the right side of the field to block a rushing linebacker coming, and he whiffs and the guy gets right around him. And it was like, man, that was a really just a strange design to block an outside guy. I mean, if we're struggling this much in just a pure pass pro pocket game, maybe simplifying things to the point of just having left tackle to right tackle lined up in the right spots and not switching them so much left to right. That might be an option if you're trying to do anything that's going to take more time. Now that's the other thing too. This is a play that's going to take some time to develop. So those plays that are going to take more time to develop, they might be some of the ones that I'd be ripping out of the playbook. Let's go to interception number 2. Now this is another one of the unbalanced sets. Again, the right tackle, the far right tackle is actually the right tight end. That's Corcoran. So Corcoran moved from the left tackle over to the right tight end spot. And on the left side of the line is only the left guard. And then the tight end is lined up where the left tackle would be. As we watch this, so he throws the interception. Now, as you watch the right tight end, which is Corcoran, he gets beat around by the guy he's going up against here. The guy gets around him pretty quickly. Now, to Corcoran's defense here, the guy has been our left guard to start the season. Then with injuries, he moves to our left tackle spot. Now in this play, we're moving him over to the right tackle spot. And that's in and of itself, we've added a complexity to something that we're already struggling with, which is drop back pass pro blocking. Everything becomes opposite when you switch from left to right. Your footwork's different. Your hands are different. Everything is. And look, I'll be the first one to say that Corcoran has struggled. I mentioned it earlier. He was a left guard on a play earlier this year, pulling to block a guy, and he struggled there. Well, we've got him in multiple positions, both sides of the line. And what can we do to simplify things? The other thing is, look at the backfield motion here by Casey and the running back. I mean, if it's a play action at all, it's a weak play action at best. So we're not doing anything to make the defense have to see things pre-snap. We're not motioning guys across the field doing jet sweeps. We're not doing any kind of two-hand play action motion with like a mesh or anything. The defense knows what we're doing basically the second it snaps, so they can play as fast as they want against us. So these are a couple examples. These are a couple plays where, I think what we're doing is these plays take a little bit more time. We're moving guys around in the spots they're not always playing. We're doing some weird, more unconventional kind of blocking on it. And I think there's things that can be done to simplify this. So do you have any questions before I move on to the positive play here?
Yeah, well, one question I have is like, who would be making these decisions on how the offensive line blocks his play? Is this more of a Whipple thing or a Raiola thing?
That's a great question. I mean, all off season, I would have told you that Whipple and Frost were working together and creating this great scheme, and that's how you do this, right? I mean, that's if you and I were co-offensive coordinators working together, that's what we do, right? And then, based off of what we hear, at least, it didn't always seem like that worked out that way, right? So I don't know. I don't know who designs this play. Osborne, I remember talking with Milt Tenneper back in the day, Mac and I, and Tenneper would talk about Osborne. He's like, he's the best coach on the staff, period. I mean, he could coach running backs better than Frank could. He could coach offensive line better than I could. He could, he knew every position. And to that point, I mean, Osborne probably could draw up the play from start to finish, every single position, say, this is how I want it blocked. This is how I want every step of every single guy being made. I don't know right now. I don't know if Raiola creates these little twist movements and all that, the pulling on some of the plays. I'm not sure. The play I want to show here, because right now,
I was just going to ask Honky. Yeah, but my question was, you've gone on these unbalanced lines here. Was our first touchdown out of an unbalanced line? I mean, what did we do something differently on that one, or?
Yeah, so this touchdown number 1 is out of the unbalanced line, and I wanted to highlight that is that this isn't a knock. This isn't a knock on the formation. It's not that the formation itself is bad. We've had a lot of success running out of the unbalanced line to the weak side, because when you think about what the unbalanced line does, you have a guard, tackle to one side. It forces the entire defense really to have to overshift, and then if you run to the back side of it, as long as the tight end Vokalek, if he can. On the back end, if he can get his block, I mean, a lot of times you have a numbers advantage on the weak side of it. So there's advantages to it. And this play that we're going to score here to Vokalek, as you see, it's unbalanced to the left. So the right tackle is actually Vokalek. And the left tackle, or the right tackle, switches over to the left tackle spot, and the left tight end is Corcoran. Now, let's watch it again. The right guard here, Bando, he pulls. Now, this is a full pull. I mean, he is moving from right to left, and everything is a run motion. Casey has a 2-hand mesh zone read to Grant. So the defense, watch the defense flow to the right here. This is a handoff to Grant as far as they're concerned. The pulling motion of the right guard actually even further makes that look like it's going to be a handoff to the left. Greg Sharp, if you listen to the radio call of this, he totally was burned by it and said it's a handoff to Grant. Oh, no, it's not. That's the deception. And look at the defense, all the eyes that they have to have. Now, here's the thing. Watch number, I think it's 17 on defense here. He's the left outside linebacker, or maybe a corner. He turns around and he's like, oh, shit, I should have had Vokalek. And he's late. He doesn't get him. All right, so Purdue's going to watch this game. And Purdue's going to say, we got to make sure that we don't let this happen. This dude, number 17 for Purdue, you're going to have to cover Vokalek. If he covers Vokalek, Casey has to pull it and run. He has to be willing to run it. This becomes really a triple option, essentially. It's, do you hand the ball off to Grant? Everything's quick. This isn't a long setup play. Everything's intended to get rid of the ball quick. And Vokalek's either going to be open, or the guy is coming up. If the guy comes up on Thompson and Vokalek gets behind him, throw the ball. If the guy drops back to cover him, you're going to, Casey's going to have to run it
full there for Casey to run. Yeah.
Yeah. There's multiple options. There's things going on before the play happened. It makes it an easier play there. And these are things that are part of the offense already. I didn't want to come up here and say, oh, we need to start, getting in the I formation and running triple option. I haven't seen us do that all year. So why would I suggest that? It's, what are the things that we're already doing well? So think of what Bush did on defense. He tore out a bunch of stuff right away and said, we're not doing that stuff anymore. Okay. Now, how do I find a way to get Nelson, Tanner, Mathis on the field? How do I get my best players out there? That's what Bush essentially did right here. How do we play fast? And I think what I would start to do, if I had my 5 suggestions here, rip out some of the longer developing plays. We just aren't good at it right now for a lot of reasons. If it's going to take 4 or 5 seconds in the pocket to develop a pass play, a lot of that stuff I'd be ripping out right now. It just isn't. It's not worth it. Simplify some of the blocking schemes. Like we did on play 1, all the little twist motion. I'd knock some of that stuff out. If we're gonna do any kind of 3 to 4 second drop back stuff, I would probably do that more in a traditional alignment of left tackle to right tackle and try to have everybody in their normal position. Because I think we've seen examples like play number 2 where Corcoran is playing on the right side instead of the left side, and he's being asked to block a different way. And it's just, we're just adding complexity to something that maybe doesn't need to be as complex. Number 3, use some deception in the backfield, like we saw on the third one, the zone read, jet sweep motion, the pulling of the guard that actually draws the defense there. That's, all those things in the backfield are things that are going to open, make the play easier. And this is about simplifying and making things easier. Number 4, roll the pocket. I mean, Dave, you've brought that up a number of times. You'll text us every once in a while. You're like, hey, there was a rollout, Honky. There was a rollout. And they tend to be
once a game.
Easy. Yeah, about once a game. And they tend to be pretty successful. Roll out of the pocket. And Casey's mobile enough to do that. And last but not least, don't be afraid to use Casey's legs. Don't be afraid to run the ball a couple times. I've never wanted him to run it 25 times a game, but there are times that he has to be able to run it. And if that's 5, if that's 6, if that's 7 times a game, whatever it is, if he came out and ran it 8 times or 9 times against Purdue, that would be significant because Purdue's not preparing for that. So those are things, and we can't think of it as, oh, well, he can't do that because he's going to be injured. We can't injure Casey and run him. He's getting injured right now without running him. He's getting some of the wickedest hits, as we saw there on interception 1 and 2, and plenty of other ones. He's already taken those hits. So there are things within the offense, things we've already seen, some strengths. Focus more on those positives, rip out some of the things that aren't working as well. And, that would be Honky's little film session, I guess. My suggestions to Coach Whipple.
Well, I learned a lot. Boomer, yourself?
No, I thought that was very compelling and rich. I liked it. So no, it was good. It's good to see that when you can actually put it to film. For those of you listening on the podcast, when you have a chance, go check it out on YouTube, and you can really see what Honky's talking about. I thought he did a good job of explaining it for those of you just listening. So, no, well worth a breakdown. So,
all right, Honky. Anything else on the offense, or we good?
No, I'm excited to see it this weekend. So I might be going to Purdue. So I'm not sure yet. I'll find out here in about 24 hours. So
could have another Redcaster on the road. All right, the Redcast road trip.
Absolutely,
keep the streak alive. Apparently, yeah. Very cool. All right, Honky, you want a parting shot before you let me and Boomer take care of the Betcast?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to start with congrats to John Cook and the volleyball team. They are alone atop the Big Ten volleyball standings after a 6-0 start, after 2 weekend sweeps at Michigan and Michigan State. So never want to take it for granted. I'm not surprised by it, but never want to take it for granted. We are a volleyball school, and congratulations. And then the second one is to Matt Davison. He gave his last radio call for NU this last week, and after like 18 or 19 years on it, and he's going to head up a new NIL operation called the 1890 Initiative. I know he kind of seems to be a polarizing figure within Husker Nation to some people for whatever, but I want to thank him for his time here, his years that he's put into the program, including the roughly $80 million that he's helped raise for the North Stadium project. I know there's people out there that what's he been doing, or just earning a check doing nothing, but he was out there, he was raising money there, and I give him my best wishes on the work that he's done and the work that he's going to be doing to help us get the next crop of players coming in here with NIL. So Matt Davison, thank you for your time. Let's get to the Betcast.
The Betcast picks of the week.
All right, Boomer. Well, we're infamous on Twitter with our picks, aren't we?
Yeah, I think Caleb Henry might have the right idea here. Just pay this. Just do the contrary of whatever we decide. Because dang it, even when Nebraska wins, I can't win. That's the worst part about it. So I thought this would fall right into our lap with the inept Rutgers offense.
The Nebraska money line, Boomer. You would have been safe.
Yeah, that's what I should have done. But yeah, I thought I'd play the odds. Well, that's all right.
Cool. So Caleb Henry, a local radio guy, calls us out on Twitter, says, time to fade the Betcast because we went 1-4 again this week, 1-3, excuse me. And after seven weeks, we are now 11-17. Now I'm 4-3 personally, and to our defense, it is challenging to pick one game out each and say that is your best bet, right? I mean, producer Skip hit this week. He got Ohio State. I bet that game. I also hit that. I bet that at like 24.5 and did not sweat it. we usually submit our best bets on Thursday night to Swobes, and he makes the graphic. I was wrestling on who to have as my best bet. I actually, for most of the day, had circled the TCU Kansas over at 68.5. And sure enough, that hit. But I was like, no, that's a little risky. That's a lot of points. So I chose Michigan at 22.5. And, of course, they only won by 21. And there's a lot of things that can happen on a game like that. Mike Hart, their running backs coach, collapsed on the sideline, and it seemed like they were a little bit phased there in that first half. Rob takes Kentucky to cover 6.5. And he probably doesn't know when he submits that best bet on Thursday night that Will Levis isn't going to play. Kentucky's starting quarterback was out, and his replacement wasn't nearly as good as him. And South Carolina wins by 10. So to your point, Boomer, I mean, hey, you got Nebraska to win, but the 3 was just too much. So maybe we'll switch up the format and allow us to take more than one because
we used to do that, Dave, and nobody cared. So yeah, we're trying to keep it brief for listeners. Yeah, we used to have like about 3 or 4 that we'd pick from, and our record was a lot better when we did that. So
it was.
We like to keep it brief, and
All right, well, let's keep this brief because it's just us. First off, the Nebraska Rutgers matchup started around 11. Was it 12.5? Got 14 earlier today. I think it's at 13.5 now. What are your thoughts on that?
That line's a lot larger than I expected it would be. I figured Purdue would be favored. I thought it would be closer to maybe a touchdown since it was in Lafayette, but yeah, I don't know what to make of that because man, it's
a lot.
Yeah, I'm not.
I thought more around the 9 or 10.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, somewhere in that range, kind of the upper single digits. But yeah, 13.5 is a lot of points, but they just don't have. They must not have a lot of faith in our defense stopping them or our offense scoring enough. And yeah, I could see that argument being made, but I'm not gonna bet this game at all. Nebraska's let me down at gambling once this year, so we won't do that again. Right. But
and yeah, to your point, though,
I think what I would do though, if you want to have fun with this game, is the money line bet would be the way to go. It got up to what was it? Nebraska plus 520 earlier today.
520 earlier today.
Yeah, so throw $10 on Nebraska if you're just feeling saucy and have money to burn. And hey, if you win, it's even double the fun because now you just pocketed $52 there. So yeah, something like that just for fun. But yeah, the line, I don't know what to make of that. So yeah.
Well, there is quite a few big matchups across the Week 7 schedule with undefeated ranked teams. One of them right there in the Big Ten with Michigan and Penn State in Ann Arbor. Michigan -7. I don't know if I'm going to jump on that one or not.
Yeah.
Minnesota, Illinois, another good big matchup there. 4-1 Minnesota in Champaign to take on the ranked Fighting Illini.
Yeah.
5-1.
Did you expect to say that earlier this year, Dave? The ranked Fighting Illini?
Yeah. Minnesota's still favored by 6.5, and that probably might rise. I don't know. I'll be interested to see.
Well, that's one you just got to be sure. Is Mo Ibrahim playing for sure, perfectly healthy again? Because, man, if you bet him last week, you'd have gotten burned on it because he didn't. So, yeah, that's one of those where you watch, you definitely wait and know who's playing before you place a bet on that one. So, and didn't Illinois quarterback get dinged up this last week too? I think.
Yep.
So that's one you definitely.
A lot of quarterbacks are hurting right now.
So, do your research on that game before you put anything on it.
Yep. Kansas is in Norman. Already 7.5-point dogs there, but they are ranked still at 5-1. Oklahoma, 3 games slide.
Did that line surprise you at all, Dave?
Little surprised. And it's actually moving in Oklahoma's, that more people are putting on money on the Sooners. So, yeah, I mean, I think Kansas can win that game. I don't know what Oklahoma's doing right now.
Especially if you get it like 7.5. Geez, you might just. I think you can keep within a touchdown, if anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Iowa State's getting 16.5 at Texas. One that I think will be interesting is USC going to Salt Lake City. The Utes are 3.5-point favorites. I think that's a good matchup for Utah, even though they're coming off of a loss. They just play so much better at home. USC does not play well out there.
It's the altitude, Dave.
Yeah, maybe, because I just think Utah could take that one. That's a night game. That place will be jacked up, ready to go.
And the other one I was looking at, Dave, just for when you talked about big games, Alabama, Tennessee. When is the last time this game had this much relevance? And Tennessee is a 7.5-point dog yet. I mean, Alabama's been kind of escaping these last couple of weeks, and this last weekend was just one of those boneheaded 4th and goal play calls I've ever seen. It's like Jimbo's daring to get fired. Just see how badly you think Iowa and Rutgers offensive calls suck. Here's what I can do. I mean, you need 2 yards and you throw a 1 yard out to a receiver. I don't understand that, but whatever.
Well, I would watch. This is another one, just like the like Kentucky with Will Levis, for example. Bryce Young didn't play last week, right?
Correct. Yeah, that does make a big difference. Yeah.
It seems like, to your point of being surprised at Tennessee being over a touchdown dog at home to an Alabama team that seems to be struggling, this tells me that I think Bryce Young's probably playing, right? I mean, the Vegas insiders know all this stuff, it feels like.
Oh, they're good. But I mean, he played when they played Texas, though, didn't he? So.
Yeah. I just think that, that'll make a difference, I mean, we'll see.
That'll be a rocking environment, though, in Tennessee. So they kind of seem to struggle in some of these, loud, noisy environments here. So that'll be interesting. Yeah, but definitely watch that. That's another injury one to watch. So
they'll have close to 100,000 there, I'd imagine. 2 more really quick. Oklahoma State, 8th ranked Cowboys, 5-0, taking on TCU, 13th ranked. Horned Frogs are also 5-0. There's another one where you never thought that was going to happen at the beginning of the year. TCU's favored by 3.5. And then you've got NC State trying to bounce back. And they have Syracuse going to the Carrier Dome. 5-0. Dino Baber saving his job again.
Yeah, I don't know how he manages to pull that off every week or every year, but he does. And they seem to be just squeaking by in games, and somehow they do it.
One good season every 4 years or so, and you're fine, apparently.
And NC State's another one with an injury bug you got to watch. Their quarterback, what's his name, Leary, I think it was. He's got an arm injury, so you got to watch for that too. So, wait till the end of the week and before you know for sure on that.
All right, we shall see. Anything else on your sheet already?
No, those are the early ones I think we had to watch. And love of God, let's have a better week this week. So.
That's right. All right, Boomer, let's get your parting shot in.
Okay, well, my parting shot's pretty basic. I don't have a whole lot going this week. It's just something we referenced kind of earlier in the show. People kind of mentioned Matt Rhule out there, and I know on Twitter a few people had noted the comparison, so maybe we'll run a poll. Do people think Matt or Honky looks like Matt Rhule? We'll do I'll throw a Twitter poll out there later. So, and we'll get some results, and we'll run them here next week. So, does Redcast Honky look like Matt Rhule, or are they the same person? I've never seen them in a room together. So,
well, if we could hear Matt Rhule break down some X's and O's.
That would make sense how Honky knows all this. So there might be something to this.
This might reveal everything. I mean,
and why we never do these on Sunday, because he's always busy in Carolina. So
that blue shirt, I mean, maybe there is something here. I don't know. He seems like a very likely candidate. Honky could just walk around as a doppelganger.
Yep.
All right, guys. Great show. I'm glad Honky broke down the offense. We missed Rob, but that's we'll have him back, I'm sure, before you know it. For now, let's call that a Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
A Huda Media Production.